Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. And this is your second week of our course, and I'm trusting that you're finding everything you need. Just a couple of updates as far as my progress with you. I have put out a call to and reached many of you, and some of you have a phone number that maybe isn't connected, or the voicemail is not set up, or I just didn't get in touch with you, and that's okay. If you do want to contact me, I do have my phone number in the syllabus, and I believe it's also in Blackboard. So you're welcome to call me or email me, and I'll continue to try to reach those who I couldn't reach. So maybe for the phone number was busy or something. I'll continue to try that. So it's just a check-in. It's just to see if you're finding everything you need. A couple of the good questions that were asked about the flow of the class and when things are due and how how APA works. So I want to make sure I'm answering all your questions when I do talk to you. So questions like that, just feel free to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to answer them. This brings me to the second part of my conversation with you today. It's about curriculum and curriculum design and some futuristic things that are happening in the area of education. One of the joys of my career over the past about 6 years is I have been involved in planning for the future in education. So I've had jobs that have allowed me to sit with people such as people from Facebook, people from Amazon, and Google, and have conversations with them about the future of work, and then how are we preparing our students for the future of their jobs. And what it's done to me, it's pretty much rocked my world as far as what I held as my belief in education and what education is for. So I want to share some of those thoughts with you so that you are seeing a mindset of where I'm coming from. The other day I had a conversation with somebody, and he used to work for Google, and he was a programmer for Google. And what he would do the analytics for Google searches. So an interesting fact, I'll give you an interesting fact first, and then I'm going to tell you the conversation we had. The interesting fact, he said, is what he did for a living is he made sure that your search was personalized for you. So that means when you do a Google search and your neighbor teacher does a Google search for the same thing, and somebody down the street does a Google search for the same thing, and I do a Google search for the same thing, let's say solar systems, for instance. So we all do a search for solar systems. Well, all of our search results will come back different. And the reason of that is because the analytics behind it, it tracks things that we've gone to before with our particular browsers. And so what it does, what he programmed Google searches to do is to customize the search for you personally, so you would have a personalized experience when you're searching, so that you don't waste a lot of time going through things you don't know. So they made it more user-friendly and personalized. And I was astonished by that. And this was recently, this was just the other day, and I was astonished that the planning had gone down to Google had gone to personalize our searches without us even knowing about that, which was interesting. And so what this gentleman has done is he left Google because he said he was kind of getting bored with that. And so he left Google, and now he's working in a school system called Alt Schools, which is a charter school, or actually it's a private school organization, ALT Schools. And what he wants to do is personalize instruction for students in their everyday encounters with content. So that was fascinating in itself. So push that aside. The conversation we had at lunch was about driverless cars. And the interesting thing is, I thought, oh yeah, we have driverless cars, and what he was telling us, because he did some of the Google cars, the driverless Google cars. He did the programming on those cars. So I was in San Francisco at the time, and there's cars driving around San Francisco right now. They have drivers in them, but the drivers don't do any of the driving. The drivers just sit there so that people don't freak out when there's a car driving down the street. But the drivers aren't supposed to do anything. The people are not supposed to do anything. What they're doing is they're gathering data, millions and millions and millions and billions of data points. So what their plan is, and this is the part that's so crazy, the plan is that they're going to be taking driver cars off of the streets, in particularly San Francisco, by 2025. They're going to be, I'm going to say that again, in San Francisco and in other big cities, the planning structure is to take any people that are driving cars out of the city and just have it be driverless cars getting people at places. So when you order an Uber, a driverless car will come and pick you up and take you somewhere. Most of the people now, or many, I don't say I want to say most, but many of the people who live in San Francisco now do not own cars. They Uber everywhere. They say it's less expensive, there's less parking hassle. So the city is starting to say, wait a minute, if most people don't own cars, then why do we have so many cars here? So what they're doing is they're starting to look at their planning for their future, and they're setting up pathways for these driverless cars in the streets, which brings up the part that I'm going to be talking to you about it with. Right now, think of all the industry that has to do with automobiles and transportation and cars. Our students leave school sometimes and they go get jobs in auto shops. They get jobs in paving streets. They get jobs in manufacturing plants where they're accepting and delivering, processing plants. All of these have to do with transportation. Our world, the United States is based on transportation. Many of our people go into some form of transportation out of high school. So I'm going to use San Francisco example. San Francisco is not going to have any parking spots for people anymore. They're going to use those parking spots for other things. So what are the things they're going to use those parking lots for? They were talking about using them for parks and trees and different things for families to do, so to make their city more eco-friendly. The streets on the side, the parking meters are no longer going to be there. So how are the cities going to be earning money then? Because they won't have parking meters. So all these things, I know you watched the Did You Know 2016 video. That's exponential change happening right now. You'll see that. But there's so many subtle things that are going on right now in our country that is changing, and that I'm going to encourage you to change the way we're thinking about what our kids are doing in school. We always talk about preparing our kids for the future. Well, sadly, the future's, I mean, not sadly, exciting, but the future's right now. Our kids need to walk out and be able to be entrepreneurs of their lives. They will not be able to go into a job. Our kindergartners are not going to have a job when they get out of school. They are going to have to create something, then be nimble enough to change on a dime when they have to get something else, and it should not have to devastate them. So we need to create kids to be thinkers, creators, engineers, designers, empathetic listeners, so they can design for their customers, because the world is changing so fast. Now, with all that said, I'm going to put a halt on that for a second. With all that said, what are the things that our kids need to know and be able to do? They need to know how to read. They need to know how to read fluently. They need to know how to read critically. They need to know how to go in and know where their source of information is coming from and be able to decipher all that information and make sense of the written word, and also make sure they understand the context of the words. They need to know mathematical equations. They need to know how to manipulate data so that they can create things using mathematical equations and with the words. They need to know, what I found, what I'm learning more and more, is they need to know computer programming. Not to the extent that everyone has to be a coder, but they need to know that everything in our society is based on code. Everything pretty much that we do is based on a code or some type of metadata or some type of data. So they need to know those kind of things. There's so many more. They need to be socially and emotionally balanced. They need to have a high EQ, which is emotional intelligence. They need to be able to function in the society we're going to put them out in. If we continue going down the pathway that we are doing right now, scheduling 90-minute topical schedules with, you're going to learn math and language arts and science and social studies, all isolated. We're not doing our students a service. Our students really need to be having integrated subjects and topics to learn how the real world is going to work when they get out. If we don't, we have not prepared them for the shock of what's going to happen when they get out of either college or get into a career, because in a career or college, they're not going to have 90-minute blocks to learn a topic. So I'm still a proponent of having our basic skills taught to our lower grade students, limiting screen time, things like that. I'm very much a proponent. But I also think we need to personalize and customize our students' learning pathway somehow. We have to figure it out as the adults of how that's going to look. We're still figuring it out, but I invite you to be thinking a little bit differently, because as we look out into our world, things are being done with metadata right now we're using that data to change mass quantities of the life of many people, and starting with big cities, starting with driverless cars, starting with there are just all kinds of things. We start reading futuristic magazines, and those things are coming now. And I'm literally having conversations with people that are doing the work, and they used to think it was going to be 2030 that those things were going to happen, which I was like, oh, well, that's 12 years from now. Okay, I'll be retired by then. But I'm thinking, wow, my grandkids are going to be in a world. My grandkids are 8 and 10. I think I mentioned to you. They're going to be in a world where they're going to be jumping in cars, and cars are not going to have drivers. In 10 years, it's 10 years from now. Well, 2025 is not even 10 years. That's 7 years. Cities are going to start. But imagine that. They are now working on this right now, and they're putting billions of dollars into it. So the whole structures of cities are going to change. Traffic patterns are going to change. Traffic is going to change. Anyways, something to think about. It's kind of exciting times, and so I just want you to be thinking about what's going on, and hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I'll talk to you soon.